Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. So we're going to talk about one incident of intimidation that happened over Christmas in the Blanchardstown area, and really to sort of roll that into a larger discussion that we're hoping to have about intimidation by drug gangs against families, against communities, what's happening out there. And we mentioned briefly on the pod the other day that we want people to get in touch with us, which is exactly what we want people to do. Tell us your stories. We understand completely that you're not in a position to be identified, most people. Some people maybe will want to, but I would imagine most people won't. Usually when they come on to us, they're at their wit's end. They have nowhere else to turn. And they don't really, I find sometimes when people ring me about this sort of stuff, they don't really even know what they want from it. They just want to speak to somebody.
Yes, because, the example we're using here is just a very random example in one sense, in that it's almost bog standard, right? But the reality is one family woke up on Christmas morning, like all families across the country, waking up presumably with hopes of having a good day. And what has happened is that a number of cars have been burnt out. This is in Sheep Hill Avenue in Corduff, Blanchardstown area. Now, what we know about this is that there's been an attempt by associates of Jason Hennessy Sr. Jason Hennessy Sr. was obviously shot dead in Brown's Steakhouse. We heard we know for a fact that he was linked to a criminal organisation that's operating in that area, involved in drug dealing, and various other types of crime. So what we know is this one family wake up, their car has been set alight, and it is linked to an attempt to recover an alleged death. An innocent family are being targeted just solely because they're linked to somebody who it is claimed owes these people money. Now, if people have ever been in those circumstances, it barely makes the papers, something like that, a car set on fire. But
it's seen as sort of criminal damage, and there's not enough in it really to make a meaty story usually, because in a lot of cases we don't really know what's behind it. No. But it's the stories behind these things that are
yes, because what happens is something like that happens, a car is set out, it might make 3 or 4 sentences in a newspaper or online. But what you find is then, and in this case we haven't talked to anybody involved, but in other cases you'll find that for those people that are on the receiving end of this is literally a life-changing traumatic event that takes every little bit of their security away. Now we're speaking, the reason we wanted to do this and do it at the start of the year is because in recent months I answer a lot of the phone calls for the desk in the Sunday World, and we're just getting these series of phone calls from people who are suffering from basically ordinary people, mostly parents of people who've become involved in the drugs trade. It's very easy for those people to their son or their daughter, but mostly their sons, have racked up this debt, either that drugs have been seized or something has gone wrong. And all of a sudden, these people often because their children are involved in the drugs business, they're in their 20s or 30s, these people are often in their 50s, 60s, they'll get a knock on the door and be told, you owe 100,000 euros or something like that. And this is, it's an epidemic in our society. It is literally ruining people's lives, not just the person who has a sort of moral culpability. Some people choose to get involved in the drugs trade, and maybe you could argue the consequences of that they should face, but it's not them, it's their families are facing it.
It's a tool of intimidation being used for quite some time. I mean, if you go back to Drogheda, to the beginning of that Drogheda feud, which obviously ramped up from small incidents. It was a drug gang. It was all about the money that can be made in cocaine, and a younger grouping split with the older order and kind of went out on their own. But it started with firebomb attacks on houses, intimidation of one another's girlfriends, all this sort of stuff. And actually one of the individuals that was sort of being used at that stage to do some of this, to carry out some of this, was Cian Mulready Woods. A teenager who ended up being murdered in a most brutal fashion by Robbie Lawler. He was dismembered and his body parts were left in various parts of Dublin and beyond as a message to the rivals. Terrifying beyond belief. But he, as an individual, had been groomed into those drug gangs as a young guy. These people who are carrying out these attacks are at the very bottom of the ladder. They're being directed from on high. Very greedy individuals who know that they can't let any money go.
No.
They have to be feared within the communities.
Yeah. So, I mean, Cian Mulready Woods, I think, was prosecuted, wasn't he, for one of these things? He was, I think, 16 at the time, and he called...
He was on curfew at the time he was murdered.
Yes. He'd called into somebody, I think, and demanded... I think, again, you're talking at this... In that case, it was a very relatively small amount of money, a couple of thousand or whatever, and it threatened to burn somebody out. So this is the sort of thing that's just happening every single day. I got a call recently from somebody, and somebody had called to the door, and these are ordinary people who have ordinary jobs, not millionaires, just regular people who... Somebody called to the door and said they owed a 6-figure sum, and if they didn't get it, their son was going to die. And it's just as simple as that. We had another case recently, somebody phoned me up about a son again owing drug debt, and 3 separate women in the family suffering arson attacks, intimidation. You know, these people... like
the threats as well against some female relatives in particular have in recent years moved into these threats of acid attacks.
Yes.
That's a new thing that has kind of come in, that they're going to throw acid in their faces.
Yeah. Now, the guards, of course, recognise that, and they set up a drug intimidation reporting programme, as it's called. You know, and it's a new scheme, effectively. The way it roughly works is it allows... Normally, if you go into the guards and say, in the past, if you had gone in and said, you know, John Smith is threatening me, they'd say, well, you have to make a statement. We can't really do much until you make a statement saying John Smith called to my house looking for 100,000. Now, they've kind of changed this programme where they allow reports to be received confidentiality. This is part of the programme. They also say they'll provide safety information and practical advice. Now, which is a great scheme. And lots of the schemes put in place by the state are great. There's always the other issue of what resources do you give for this good scheme to be implemented. So I know I spoke to somebody recently who said they went to this programme. They had a really positive meeting with a guard, a senior guard, and then they got, you know, on a personal level, this guy really understood it. But then they came out and they went back to their house in the middle of this community. And the guards are not going to be able to provide 24-hour protection, armed guard protection to almost anybody in this state. I mean, some of the people on the very high level witness protection get a really high degree, but a lot of so I'm not knocking the scheme because I think it's really a good move forward, but you also have to look at it from the perspective of the victims. These nearly always are people who know nothing about this world, who are just not a part of this drugs world. And they make this report, nothing is going to happen straight away, and they go back to their community then, and, you know, while the guards will keep an eye on them, it doesn't...
They don't feel safe. And, you know, there will be promises of patrols and stuff in around their homes and stuff. They don't see that.
No. And there is a general resourcing issue. So, like,
there is a resourcing issue, and I'm not saying that there isn't patrols, but they don't see them because I think people, when they're in fear, you're almost debilitated by fear, and you literally want to see a car going past your house every
or probably sitting there with a gun, like
exactly.
And that isn't going to be the case.
Sort of going back to that original, you know, you go and you make a report. So a lot of people that are touched by this are people who have no understanding of that world.
Nothing.
They have nothing to do with it, and they're not living within the communities that are the worst affected by that world. But there are other people who are being intimidated within communities
100%.
who know everything about that world. And the first rule, of course, is you never go to the guards. You do not tout, you don't rat, whatever the word it is you want to use to describe it. People adhere to that. And I've always thought that is one of the sort of the invisible structures that keeps everything together. Because it only benefits those at the very top. You know, in a way, it goes back to sort of the old omerta of the Italian mafia and everything, and you never trust the authorities, no matter what is done. But that no matter what is done. So what level do you accept? Do you accept your son, your child, your daughter is kneecapped and you still don't tout or rat? But it's almost a cultural thing with people who believe it. And they will be turned on by their community sometimes for if they do go, no matter what has happened to them.
So I know another case I spoke, and this is a number of months ago, a single mother, her son became involved in selling cannabis at a relatively low level. I mean, you know, you're talking thousands rather than tens of thousands, ended up something like 10,000 in debt after he was caught by the police. They seized the drugs, obviously. He owes the money. And she spoke about, she lives right in the heart of that community, would have known some people involved in that, but not at a high level. And what happened was they came into her, go through the house is how they describe it. So this is a normal procedure where in order to collect the debt, make the threat first, if that doesn't forthcoming, because a lot of people don't have 10 grand. They go through the house as they describe it.
So they let themselves
kick the door in and go in. A few people, probably with balaclavas, and smash up a bit of stuff. Went in, stabbed your man, not in a sort of fatal way. Gave him a stabbing, a few punches, and ultimately, again, this is somebody who doesn't. The mother wasn't working, and she had to get 10 grand out of her family. Now, you know. What happens as well is that there's a couple of different people collecting these debts. So there's often the young fellas who are selling a bit of thing, and in this case, that's what it was. These aren't high-level criminals, but they can also sell on that debt then sometimes. The even higher guys who will take on the debt. And, you know, Eamon the Don Dunn, for example, used to do that. So if somebody owed 20 grand and your man and the drug dealer thought they couldn't get any, they'd sell it to Eamon Dunn for 10 grand. And then he'd rock up with his heavies and he'd make sure people would sell their homes.
And also things can go wrong from that moment. The money is finally borrowed and the parent hands it over. And they, you know, this is not a legal thing. You're not going to get a piece of paper saying you're good to go.
No.
That money can be taken by a young individual who either can then be robbed themselves or use it for something else or to pay off one of their debts. So the actual money never gets to where it was supposed to go. So they come back. We never got paid. And that's devastating. You've already gone to the pot, the only pot you have to raise those funds. And you just get worse and worse and worse into the situation. Do you recall a few years ago when Robert Rue Redmond was at his prime? I went up to County Tyrone to speak to a woman called Sharon Girvan. I hope she doesn't mind me. She's, you know, to her, the story is still published and we've kept in touch. She was a fantastically brave woman. Her story was, and maybe if she's still up for it, Sharon might come on and tell it herself, but just to give it to you briefly, her son, and she wasn't claiming that he was a saint in any way, shape or form, had been met up with Rue Redmond, had been in some sort of contact with them.
Holidays, I think.
They'd been on holidays in Lanzarote or somewhere like this. And she didn't know the full story. But what she did know was that Robert Rue Redmond was demanding 300,000 off her son. And the son hadn't even really been living in the house. She'd worked very hard, this woman, along with her husband. They'd a beautiful home. They'd other children who had been educated and who had, you know, were going a very straight road in life. And Redmond started to rock up to her house. And he wasn't just firebombing cars, he was shooting through the window. I was in her bedroom where I could see the bullets. Herself and her husband were asleep in bed. The bullets had come through the window and embedded themselves in the wall behind their bed while they were asleep.
Yeah.
And there was shots fired into the house another night when they were having a party for one of the other children out the back of the house.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. She was a very brave woman.
Yeah.
And the height of nothing but like this sort of heart of a lion. Yeah. And she was very much, standing up and saying, I've worked hard for what I have.
Yeah.
Your dispute is, you're coming for me.
Yeah.
Rue Redmond, of course, was chaotic, had sent her son texts actually saying in the texts from his own phone, I'm going to shoot your ma.
Yeah.
And followed that up with these bullets coming in through the house. So she was very, very brave at the time to talk, and she stood her ground. She got, I would imagine, as much help as there was available. But what ultimately happened for her was Rue Redmond was picked up for a murder.
And that of course can happen.
And he ended up in but it was an unusual situation in that Redmond wasn't using underlings. He was going for this himself. This was a real personal thing. And he was travelling up and down across the border. He was very, very chaotic, out of control, very intimidating, very dangerous and very capable.
Yes.
Had he got a clear sighting of her, of shooting her.
Yeah. And of course she was in another jurisdiction.
Yeah.
There are people who are being intimidated by people who are 2 roads away. Mm-hmm. Not only people know every single member of your family, know where they go to school or where they work. And what solution do you offer them? I mean, it's not, are they going to stand in there? And then, of course, the other thing is that sometimes people swallow spiders to catch a fly. They rope in other criminals to try and deal with this situation and end up paying an extra 10% to do deals. But it is absolutely, like, we talk of gangland, of course, every week. And many people think, well, if one drug dealer kills another drug dealer, they both chose that life. And there's a sort of, moral, it's not the same as these people who are being dragged into this world for debts that they wouldn't do. Remember, in the real world, like if you had a child and that child went bankrupt in business, it doesn't automatically come back on the parents. So these things are destroying people.
And even now, sometimes when there's a murder like that, or somebody's picked up, that doesn't, as you say, necessarily mean the end of the debt.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the case of the last time Ger Dundon was picked up in the UK, he's in jail in the UK at the moment in relation to a kidnapping.
Yeah.
He was caught with Cornelius Price, who's since passed away. Very serious criminals from very serious criminal gangs who feuded for years and all the rest of it. But they were caught in that kidnap of 2 businessmen in the process of picking up a debt.
Demanding a debt,
which had been owed to the then dead, now still dead, but just recently murdered Warren Crossan.
Yeah. So
they went to collect his debts.
Yes.
Robbie Lawler himself, what he was doing a lot in the north before his own death in April of 2020, was demanding money for the estate as such of his brother-in-law, Richie Carberry, who had been shot dead while he was in prison.
Exactly. And I mean, it goes on. And funnily enough, another person described to me how they had a relative, and that relative got paid every second week, like, or whatever people do, and they'd leave work that day on payday, and the guys would be standing there to collect all of the money. And that was going on and on. That was going to go on for 4 or 5 years till the debt was paid off from her son.
And at the heart of it, you have the individual who racks up the debt.
Yeah.
Right? And I find in a lot of cases, you can have kids who are troubled in many ways, who, get involved in drug taking, a little bit of dealing, whatever, things go wrong for them. You often hear people talking about the kid with the issues around sort of ADHD and those kind of impulsive behaviour difficulties, that they get into trouble in school, they fall out of the schooling system, and then they just continue to get into trouble. They make very bad decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not saying obviously every kid with that, but there seems to be. Do you find that there can be a lot of that?
Yeah,
involved?
There's a big thing. A big lot of the people that get in trouble, it's this storing of either drugs or money. So these people aren't automatically involved in the drugs trade, but what they get told is, I'll give you £1,000 a week if you store, £500,000 worth of cocaine in your bedroom effectively, right? So they're not making any big profits. They're literally getting that money. But then that cocaine gets seized and all of a sudden you're told, well, you owe that $500,000 because you were minding it for me. It's people like that on a really low level and they get hit with this debt because presumably that cocaine got seized because the guards were looking at the person ahead of them and all of this, but it comes back on them. And then, it's this interest can be applied and it just goes on and on and on. And the criminals as well, they can't be seen to allow debts to die. So they're also in a kind of a vicious circle. But a lot of people have told me about these payment plans where you basically, people are told this is what you're paying off for the rest of your people that are approaching retirement are going to be told you're paying this off for the rest till you're 70.
And the problem is that's that one. Right. But often when you have these chaotic individuals who get involved in trouble in the first place, who get lured into it, who are users or whatever, that sometimes isn't enough to set them on a straight and narrow. They go do something stupid again.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other layer of problems. And what do you do with that? And I feel very sorry for people who have, kids like that, because in the end of the day, you'll do anything for them.
Yeah.
You're going to fight for your child's life. You don't particularly want your child to be kneecapped no matter what they've done. And you will go and do anything to try and save them and protect them. And yet it's just a horrendous situation at your doorstep.
Because people have been killed for hundreds of euros, for a couple of grand. I mean, it's happened many, many times. And, it's not a notional risk. Now, I often think, that the parents themselves, even though they are threatened, they're unlikely to be killed. Like, I do think it's clear to say that most of the intimidation that comes their way is threats. But
you got a situation where you're lying in bed and there's a bullet coming in over the top of your head.
Exactly.
Or there's a car can go on fire in the front, the house could catch fire, a pipe bomb comes through your window. There could be a kid or an adult sleeping on the couch downstairs. There's all those really high risks there that it mightn't be foreseen, but it can happen in the course of this very dangerous activity.
Or you have a younger teenager, nothing to do with anything. They're going down to the shop and all of a sudden they're getting, box in the back of the head for their brother's crimes. I mean, this is taking away everybody's peace of mind. Now, we can look at it and think, what will we do? But, it's very different for different people in different circumstances. If you have...
I don't think we're going to come up maybe with the answers for everybody, but I suppose with our platform, what we can try and do is pull back the curtain a little bit on this and start talking about it. And hopefully people will share their stories. And let's reach out and try and find some people who have solutions, or certainly a way that they can describe or they can discuss. We might try and speak to somebody who was involved and would have been at a high level in the Drogheda area during a lot of the intimidation, how they handled it. And, speak to other community workers. It'd be interesting. It's just interesting to start airing this.
Yeah, because there are resources there and it's good to have a frank discussion about how those resources can serve the people that need them. But not everybody will know of these resources. So what we really want is for people, if people can send us in some stories so we can tell it now.
And I suppose, questions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we will be 100% absolutely careful not to, put anybody in trouble. These can be very general descriptions of things that have happened to people. And we'll try and maybe just try and look at it because, look, as I said, we speak a lot about, Daniel Kinahan buying mansions in Dubai and all, but really the impact of the gangland crime, I mean, this is the front line of it. This is the impact of it. Because that world is underwritten by violence. It only can operate because there is a threat of violence, either an explicit or an implicit threat. And that threat of violence maybe operates at the top, but it seeps all the way down to people that are just trying to live ordinary lives and pay ordinary bills. And this thing, I mean, I have talked to somebody who will never feel the same again about their whole life because of their actions of a relative that they had nothing to do with. So we're just trying to address it, I think.
Exactly. And I'm happy to say that I have in front of me the email addresses. If you want to email us, it's crimeworld@sundayworld.com or crimeworldpod@gmail.com. But I think probably the crimeworld@sundayworld.com one is the best. And we also have all our social media out there. You know, there's Crime World. What is it? Crime World with Nicola Talent. Sorry. What is it?
So you've done it so well there. And then,
I know, I was doing so well.
Briefly.
I just find the social media stuff all a bit overwhelming.
But yeah, can be contacted on...
It's Crime World with Nicola Talent. That's me.
Yeah.
And that is on Instagram. We're on
we're on
Twitter,
Instagram as well.
And we're both personally on as well.
Yeah.
I'm just under Nicola Talent SW. You're under something weird. What are you under?
I'm just under Niall Donald.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. I suppose arguably weird in of itself. But
yeah. And as a little... No, you're under...
No. But that's my username. But that's my... Yeah, but like Niall Donald, if you search for it, I'm there.
You're there? Okay.
My beautiful face is there visible.
My first lesson of 2025, which is that. Just as a little aside before we finish up, you were telling me that you're going to go for the 10K.
I'm gonna, that's my, because I'm not big on resolutions. I'm generally don't try and improve myself.
How long have you been doing the 5K for? About 8 years?
Probably 6 years.
3 times a week?
3 times a week, yeah. So I'm going to try and do 10K.
And what spurred that?
I don't know. Too much. Well, yeah, just that sense of self-disgust driven by eating so much chocolate over Christmas. I thought, I have to.
Know what's wrong with you? I think you're heading for a big one, are you?
What? 40 is going to be soon. 40
yeah,
soon.
40 is going to be soon. It is a bit sort of rattling, all of that. You do wonder, has someone made a mistake?
No. I've got, it might never happen.
Fitness.
I've got 10 months to go before I hit anything like big 5-0.
Okay, well, you can do a kilometre a month.
The world could end by then. It could be World War III.
That's how I live,
I might never have to reach 50.
I totally and completely get you. I live for the day, maybe for tomorrow. I'd maybe go that far, but I don't seem to like planning.
No.
Bit of a problem with planning far into the future.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
With anything.
Yeah, well, look, it doesn't, all the planning I've ever done, none of it has ever worked out that way anyway, so.
Like myself. Right, well listen, that's what we're hoping to do, so please do start writing to us or contacting us in whatever way you feel comfortable, and your anonymity is guaranteed. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.